Just as we thought that wind and solar energy would help meet normal growth demands for electrical power, along comes these enormous data centers. Very hungry for electricity data centers.
Oh, the answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind.
Democratic visions can't say the answer is really blowing in the wind, but here's producer Jeff Strait.
Good evening. Aaron Klemz is Chief Strategy Officer at the Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy. The MCEA is a nonprofit organization that works in the courts and with lawmakers and public agencies to, in its own words, enact, strengthen, and enforce smart environmental law. Mike McIntee and Aaron have been colleagues since their days at the Uptake and AM 950 radio. They share our concerns with plans to install huge data centers in Minnesota. Hermantown, Pine Island, Monticello, Cannon Falls, Rosemont, and Eagan share the headlines with data center. Now Aaron Klemz lives in Fridley, Mike McIntee in Eagan. Here's Mike.
So I use AI all the time on my phone to look up stuff or write stuff, and it's a great little tool. But Aaron, there's a cost that goes with that, isn't there?
Well, every time you do that, it's basically the equivalent of pouring a 16-ounce bottle of water down the drain and running, your microwave for a couple of minutes on high. It really depends on the kind of thing you're asking it to do. If you're using it to make an image, for example, or create a new video, it uses a lot of computational power. For a text search or having it look at a piece of writing, not nearly as much. And one of those is not that much, but if you multiply that by hundreds of millions or billions of actions in a day or a week or a month, then it really starts to add up how much water and power is being used.
Is that of concern these days?
Absolutely. I think, we see an absolute explosion of interest in AI. It's a geopolitical, dispute right now between the U.S. and China, and there is a drive toward dominance in this state. And so you have hundreds of billions of dollars of capital chasing after AI dominance, both in buying chips, but more importantly, from my perspective, the place where you house those chips, those data centers. And that's what's really captivating Minnesotans right now, because there's so much interest in building really, really large, or what they call hyperscale data centers here in Minnesota, really for the first time.
Why is Minnesota such a hotbed for data center right now? Why does everybody want to build here?
Well, so Minnesota is late to the game, right? We're not by any means the center of the universe when it comes to data center development. That would be Virginia. So in Virginia, you have over 100 of these hyperscale data centers, and they've been developing for a really long time. And I think what's happening right now is a combination of three trends. The first is saturation. You have to go find new places that have water and power and land to develop. Number two is you've got this AI bubble really developing quickly, where you've got companies chasing after this with billions of dollars trying to develop it as quickly as possible. And then lastly, there'll be a need to spread this out over the globe over time. I think Sam Altman, the head of OpenAI, said that pretty soon we'll have data centers everywhere, right? So I think it's a combination of kind of the ubiquity of the technology, the fact that where it's being built right now is running out of space and power and water, and interest in just kind of like expanding the field in general.
So water, power, and land. Do we have enough of that in Minnesota to support all this?
Well, right now we do. I think one of the things, especially on the power front, we have real concerns about its sustainability, though. As of right now, Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy, where I work, is tracking 17 data center proposals in Minnesota that have entered what we call an environmental review stage. So these are not just ideas, but they've gone so far as to have a local unit of government go out and do an environmental study or begin one. If all 17 of those come to fruition, it would use more power than every household in Minnesota. And that's impracticable. You can't do that. It's not possible right now. And So you have to ask some real questions about the sustainability of this, or whether it's even possible to build all of these data centers in Minnesota at the pace that they're doing it right now.
I mean, is it just throw everything against the wall and see if we can get some in there? Is that kind of where this is going, and we don't have to worry because there's only going to be one or two that are going to get approved and we'll be fine?
I don't know about that. I think it is unclear, however, how many of these proposals will actually be built. That's true of any development, right? I mean, ultimately, a lot of times people will propose things and then not build it, but it's in the broader context of this industry, it's not just one or two. It will be a half dozen or a dozen or more in the end. And I think we're just at the very opening stages in Minnesota of seeing interest in our state. And we do have a lot of water. I mean, we're the state of 10,000 lakes, right? Land is reasonably cheap and available, and we actually have quite a bit of available power right now. That will quickly change, though, if a lot of these proposals are built.
Now, theoretically, these data centers bring jobs to a place, to a city or a county where they're being built. But I'm also hearing that we're not hearing much about those proposals until it's too late. Why is, I mean, this is being done in secret in a lot of places, isn't it?
Yeah, this is really one of the more troubling trends we see in this data center wave of development is the drive toward secrecy. And it takes a lot of different forms. Two of the most obvious are the signing of non-disclosure agreements. And that means that city or county or state staff, and sometimes even elected officials, have agreed not to disclose what they know about a secret project that's being proposed in their community.
I mean, it just seems like that doesn't match. Government should be open. We should know what's going on in government, unless it's like super secret spy stuff. But this isn't it. This is business development. I mean, is this legal to do that? Ask somebody to sign a non-disclosure agreement and I can't find out about it?
Well, so it's not legal to, you can't violate any laws, right? You cannot sign an illegal contract in Minnesota, right? So if it's violating state law, you can't make, public data non-public. You can't shield it. So if I submit what is called a Data Practices Act request, or what people might know as FOIA or Freedom of Information Act requests, the city, even if they have a non-disclosure agreement, can't say, sorry, we can't give that to you, even though you're entitled to it because we signed an agreement. However, you don't know what you don't know. And one of the things that's more disturbing about it is that, let's say a citizen who's located next to a proposed development goes to their city councilor and says, hey, what's being planned across the street from my house? And they say, well, I can't talk to you about that. Sorry, I signed an agreement. I mean, that's not doing your job as an elected official, in my opinion. And, I think it's pretty common for staff to engage in preliminary discussions with a developer about a lot of things, and they want to do it, behind a little bit of a veil. And I get that. You don't want land speculators to reach in, for example, and drive up the price of land where you're developing it. But these non-disclosure agreements aren't just at the beginning. These, as we just found out in the Hermantown case up near Duluth, non-disclosure agreements were signed back in summer of 2024, and we didn't even find out that this was really a data center proposal until a couple of weeks ago in September of 2025.
Yeah, I think it was codenamed Project Loon.
Correct.
Which just is loony. I mean, why do you keep that away from people? Why do you not want to tell people? I mean, full disclosure here, you filed a lawsuit in this case, right?
Yep, just today, actually.
Tell me about it.
So all of these proposals go through what's called environmental review in Minnesota. And environmental review is not a permitting decision. It's not deciding whether it meets the law or doesn't. It's meant to be kind of a accounting of all the costs and benefits of a proposal. So we know, like you said, there might be some jobs created as a result of constructing one of these data centers. It may bring property tax revenue to a city. That's part of the reasons why a lot of cities want them. But there are also costs. There are costs on the community, like noise and light, traffic. There's a cost for well users, especially if water use is driven up because of cooling needs. It could drain someone's well or make it so their well doesn't produce as well. We've seen that in several places across the country. And also, what happens if your power goes up or it becomes less reliable because of the draw on the power grid right next to your house? And these are all things that get considered in environmental review. But what's happening right now is the secrecy is not just about non-disclosure agreements. But these environmental reviews are supposed to be about a project or a proposal. And it starts by saying what the proposal is. And frequently what we were finding, and what we found in the Hermantown case, was they didn't even say that it was a data center. And we didn't know anything about the data center that's being proposed there, even though that's supposed to happen during that study stage. And so, that's why we brought a lawsuit today to say you have to be honest with the public and tell them what you're proposing and what the impact might be and how you plan to mitigate it. And that's what Minnesota's environmental review laws are supposed to do.
I mean, there was stories here recently about council meetings in Hermantown and public hearings where the public apparently was almost shut out, that they weren't allowed to ask questions. It was just kind of shunted aside, and things got pretty heated up there, didn't they?
I don't think it was really that they weren't. Well, they didn't get answers. You're right about that. The council meeting that I'm thinking of is the most recent action they took was a rezoning action for that parcel. About 300 people showed up. Over 50 testified.
And to be clear, this rezoning did not mention the data center.
No, it mentioned the development, and in fact, if I recall correctly, at least one council member was like, "I'm just learning now that this is a data center," which I find hard to believe, to be perfectly honest. But it did seem like there was a lot of talk about how there will be future actions, and this is not a final decision about this proposal. This is just a rezoning action. But I think one of the most frustrating things for citizens that are concerned about an action in their community is this kind of, it's always too early and then it's too late. There's never the right time to come forward with your concerns. And starting off in secrecy with non-disclosure agreements and not being really clear about what's being proposed in the community only leads to more distrust and concern about what's actually being proposed there. And it's really driving, I think, opposition in lots of places, including in Hermantown.
Let's back up to electricity here just for a moment, because we just had elections go past, and one of the things I've heard about that really influenced people's votes was affordability.
Yeah.
And electric rates in some parts of the country are just shooting through the roof. My electricity bill doesn't go up because I have a solar panel on my roof, and so I'm protected from that. But would adding data centers ultimately end up driving up the price of electricity for people in Minnesota, or it depends on where you are and what the situation is?
I think it already is. And we're seeing this trend, again, nationwide. In places where there are a lot of data centers, we're seeing really rapid spikes in electricity costs. And it makes sense. With this much load growth, so each one of these hyperscale data centers uses roughly the same amount of electricity as the Monticello nuclear power plant produces every year. And so think about that. I mean, we don't have a whole bunch of spare capacity on our grid. And so that means we have to build new power plants. And then we have to build the transmission infrastructure to connect those power plants to these data centers. And that costs money too, billions of dollars, as a matter of fact. And so we're already seeing prices beginning to spike. There's a lot of dispute about what's causing that. But I think it's undeniable that there's a direct connection between where there's a lot of data center development happening is where we're seeing some of the most rapid increases in power prices. And I think that we'll continue to see that trend.
I mean, this just strikes me as the same thing that just-in-time delivery Amazon did by, hey, we're going to keep the trucks on the road. We're using the public good of roads and everything else to deliver this, but we're getting benefit from that, but we're not paying for it. Are they paying for the electricity?
So they pay for the electricity. I think the Minnesota legislature took on portions of this issue last session, and one of the things that they did that was really good was direct our investor-owned utilities, so Xcel, Minnesota Power, and Otter Tail Power, the three in Minnesota, to develop what they call a tariff, which is, it's not a tariff in the kind of like trade sense, it's a rate class for very large users. And that the goal of that is to make them pay for the cost of the power that they're being served. Right? So if you need to build a new substation, you need to build a new transmission line, you need to build a new power plant, you should be paying for that, not the other ratepayers instead. We were just at the very beginning of that process at the Public Utilities Commission. Xcel, which was actually already in the process of proposing a rate class for data centers, just came forward with their proposal, I think, last week. So it hasn't been approved yet. The goal in statute is to do that, to make the data center user pay for the cost of needed transmission upgrades and power upgrades. Time will tell whether that actually happens or not. One last thing I will mention is that this only applies to investor-owned utilities in Minnesota, not to co-ops. And a number of the proposals in Dakota County are in Dakota County co-op land, and are served, and so they wouldn't be affected by this at all. And I think we really need to look at that again. It can't just be the 3 big investor-owned utilities. It needs to be everybody. And I think everyone would agree to the idea that data centers should pay for the power that they're consuming and also the cost of building the power plants to provide it.
I mean, the one nice thing about the co-op, since I get my power from a co-op, is I have sort of a say in what happens there. We get to elect the board and we get to give them feedback on things. So there is some mechanism there, but I'm hearing you that you really might need some other guardrails on this.
Well, I mean, so in the case of the Dakota co-op, the proposals that are in their service area are already 3 times the total load of all of their customers right now, right? So massive changes are about to happen. They have to, right? I mean, and that's going to come at a cost to somebody. The question is who will pay for it, right? And I think, right now there's well-founded concern that those costs are not going to be borne only by the proposers, but rather by all the ratepayers, including you and me.
And just in terms of load, I mean, we've had these incentives where people like myself have been putting in solar panels and we've been feeding back on the grid. We still need the grid, but those are going away now under the Trump administration. So solar power as a possible source for replacing all this, it seems to me like that's a shrinking commodity, or at least not growing as fast as it used to be.
I mean, we haven't seen the full impact yet of the changes in federal policy on solar, but there's no doubt that it's going to slow things down. And even folks who are generally not all that enthusiastic about solar and wind and other forms of renewable energy are asking questions like, can we really afford to not be building everything right now? I mean, and the load growth is so massive that really we've built a lot of solar over the last 8 to 10 years. A lot of storage is needed as well, so battery storage to make sure that when it's at night, we can still use some of that power. But we really have a need we've built a system around a kind of steady state of electrical need, right? In Minnesota, we've had laws on the books for years that mandate efficiency. And the goal was over time to reduce the amount of electricity that was needed in Minnesota. But in just the last 2 years, the data center trend has reversed that entirely. And we've built a system around a very long, slow decline in electrical use. But with EVs and with heat pumps and now with data centers, we've added all these load growth drivers to our power system, and we haven't quite figured out exactly what to do with that yet.
Let's go back to data centers here just for a moment, because I keep coming back to my experience. City of Eagan, the city has, not the city, but within the city, there's been several new data centers built. They're small ones. Is that something I should worry about?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Minnesota has had a lot of small data centers for a long time. I mean, we had a law on the books as far back as 2011 that gave tax incentives to build data centers. And because Minnesota has a high population of Fortune 500 companies in their headquarters, it's natural that you would have a lot of data needs for storage. But these are totally of a different scale. I mean, generally the way we measure the size of data centers is in the amount of power that they use. So maybe we're talking about 15, 30 megawatts of power. That would be about 5% of the Monticello nuclear power plant, which produces 600 megawatts a year. Now we're talking about 500 megawatt, facilities, and that is a just entirely different kind of scale. A lot of these earlier data centers were either housed in relatively small buildings, or they were on the floor of an existing building. Right now, we're talking about building 1.5 to 3 million square foot warehouses. For context, that's the U.S. Bank Stadium where the Minnesota Vikings play. That's 1.75 million square feet. Right. So, a building the size of U.S. Bank Stadium that uses as much power as the Monticello nuclear power plant. That's the new reality of what's being proposed, and that's nothing like what we used to have for legacy, or what they call enterprise scale data centers that you're familiar with.
So somebody watching this is saying, oh, I'm concerned about this. Is there anything we can do? Anything that people should be doing? Alternatives? And suggestions here. We've got just about a minute.
Yeah, so first of all, paying attention to what's happening in your community is really important. It's hard. As we just mentioned, there's a lot of attempts to keep things secret. Vigilant citizens that are paying attention to what's being proposed in their community can raise the alarm and get people to help them early on. And so number one is keep track of what's happening at your Planning and Zoning Commission of all things. Oftentimes these are portrayed as technology parks or office parks, and it can be hard to know whether it's actually a data center or not. So pay attention and ask questions when you see it. The second thing I'd say is talk to your legislators. What we got done at the legislature last year was good, but it was incomplete. We didn't address water use. We didn't really address noise and light and zoning. All these things are still live in front of the Minnesota legislature. So if you care about that, talk to your legislator about it and tell them that you want them to take action to protect Minnesotans from the impacts of hyperscale data centers.
Okay, I'm going to make one more point there, though. Support local journalism, because you don't know what's going on in those meetings unless there's somebody sitting in there for you.
That's so right. I mean, I serve on the planning commission in my city where I live. We can have 2 or 3 people that are in the audience.
Yeah.
So we really do need a vigilant local journalism to follow this stuff, and it's been really hurt, by years and years of disinvestment. So you're right, 100%.
Aaron, thank you so much for coming in today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Mike and Aaron know the importance of dependable journalism. I'm a member of the team that helped start Eden Prairie Local News a little more than 5 years ago. Our hyper-local nonprofit and free online newsroom continues to grow, but depends on advertisers, grants, and donations. The Newsmatch campaign helps EPLN and other nonprofit news organizations nationwide with their end-of-year fundraising drives. Here's a message from EPLN's Nancy T. Lukens, Steve Chewy, and Mark Weber.
Well, Newsmatch is a matching grant provided by the Institute for Nonprofit News.
Every November, we raise money for Eden Prairie Local News through a public media type matching campaign.
Newsmatch is our biggest donation drive of the year. From November to December, every dollar given is matched dollar for dollar for this promotion.
Eden Prairie Local News is really a community effort.
Just go to our website, click on donate, and you can donate until midnight on December 31st.
In fact, I think of Eden Prairie Local News as being produced and paid for by the citizens of Eden Prairie.
Thank you.
Help sustain Eden Prairie Local News with a tax-deductible donation before the year's end to qualify your news source for significant matching grants. Thank you. Now, here are a few video clips from the past year that definitely are not newsworthy, but they speak to life in the southwest suburbs.
Well, Jeff, some were newsworthy and were covered by Eden Prairie Local News. The No Kings demonstration in Minnetonka on Saturday, June 14th, the day that State Senator Melissa Hortman and her husband were assassinated. The day that Senator Hoffman, his wife, and daughter were nearly killed.
It's absolutely despicable. This is not what democracy is about. I'm here because I'm a true American to my heart, and we refuse to not come today. We demanded to come today because I will not be silenced by a terrorist.
And on October 18th, at more than 2,700 locations nationwide, more than 350 lined Flying Cloud Drive in Eden Prairie. That was news. Last April, Story Arts of Minnesota presented StoryFest. The festival ran for 2 days at Bloomington Civic Plaza.
It is actually my work, my life's work, is Beowulf.
Burst out laughing, walked away, walked by a supervisor. Yeah.
These could be speeches that contain anecdotes that are stories. It could be folk tales. It could be tales from our personal lives.
So in the days leading up to my speech, I got a couple of really good ideas.
I again, linking back to the person. And so the stories really, really can move and change society, just in how.
So I said, no, he doesn't need to do that. And I said, yes, I do. No, I did.
To increase my chances of not failing, I went to the study session.
Oh, there's Howard. I think that's Howard Lieberman.
It is myself.
Yeah.
There he is. Whoa.
In August, a parking lot on Main Street in Hopkins featured a pop-up custom car show. About the same time in Hopkins, outdoors, a creative writing class near the clock tower looked inspired and ready to publish. In September, over in Edina, the sidewalk cafes were busy. Nearby on France Avenue, a beloved art gallery was holding its annual State Fair Reject Show. The Douglas Flanders features fine paintings and sculptures that were curiously not acceptable by the State Fair's art show judges. The rejects are on sale. The food, drinks, and chat are free.
Okay, it's made with street sign materials, courtesy of 3M.
During the 2024 Reject Show, we met acclaimed artist Jimmy Longoria. It turns out Longoria knows our good friend Howard Lieberman, a celebrated storyteller. Jimmy claims to spar with Howard. Both live in Stillwater.
Well, I love to hate the guy, and I hate to love the guy. We've been sparring partners verbally for over, I think, 7 years. We get together, we talk. He tries to tell stories, and I try to stick my thumb in them.
You have to understand that we have a society controlled by right-wing individuals who believe.
Probably in some ways.
If you own some, they might say that.
Yes. But I also.
A lot of harm comes out of those meetings.
School board, library board,
Yeah. People demand that books be burned, and it goes on, and people be fired, and.
Yeah, this is the stuff I want to make go away.
In April, Birch Island Woods in Eden Prairie was served by the VFW post in Hopkins.
So join us at Birch Island Woods.
I don't think that was very good. That's pretty mechanical.
Well, I had it. It was.
Well, that's it for now. We'll see you next time.
Democratic Visions is handcrafted by volunteers from Eden Prairie, Hopkins, Minnetonka, Edina, and Bloomington. Watch us on select cable systems and on our YouTube channel. This is Carol Sundstrom.